I'm telling you, sometimes the understanding runs really thin, particularly when the parents don't keep these things alive in the hearts of the children. Okay, then he gives us 4 ways, and they're abbreviated in these slides because we're running out of time. I knew we would by this time. But you can go back and read our Divine Constitution, October General Conference, 1987, November Enzyme, okay? This was the keynote address of that conference. Why? Because God raised up that prophet to be the prophet on the bicentennial of the signing of the United States Constitution. That wasn't by happenstance. I don't believe that's any more happenstance that the church was organized on April 6th, or the Savior was born on April 6th, or George Washington was elected on April 6th. The God of heaven knows the end from the beginning. Anyway, Ezra Taft Benson was the man on the scene. Honestly, I've got to say, I've never missed anybody more in depth than I have him. He was so plain spoken on these things, but that's a personal perspective. He talks about how we're going to save this nation. He says, first and foremost, we must be righteous. Latter-day Saints must be virtuous. It's a very personal thing. We first have to cleanse the inner vessel. We have to set it up in our own homes. In fact, I wish there were time to tell you this story. A conversation I had that resulted in me writing a book that the first general authority called by Ezra Taft Benson when he became the prophet was a man by the name of H. Berlin Anderson. I had this conversation with H. Berlin Anderson just before he died. And I was talking about how do we save the nation. And there's kind of a long conversation that goes with it, and we don't have time for that. But the fact is, he told me that unless we save the cause of liberty in our homes, we will lose it as a nation. And honestly, most homes never give consideration to it. It's, how about again, your favorite sports team or favorite college, school activity, whatever. Or TV show or movie or what, but diversions. And he said we must save it in the home. And that resulted in me writing the book and giving a lecture series that I give to try and take it in the home so that it can be taught by moms in the homes to their children. And dads and moms can talk about it in their homes. But the Latter-day Saints have got to take the lead somewhere, sometime. You'd think, after everything we've said in this little gathering, what the prophets have said, I don't know. So I'll leave that at that. Second, we must learn the principles of the Constitution and the tradition of the Founding Fathers. Have we read the Federalist Papers? Are we reading the Constitution and pondering it? Are we aware of its principles? Are we abiding by these principles and teaching them to others? Could we defend the Constitution? Can we recognize when the law is constitutionally unsound? Do we know what the prophets have said about the Constitution and the threats to it? You've had an overview tonight of what the prophets have said. I mean, we could take a tangent, like I said, about socialism, communism, welfare statism, fascism, Marxism, whatever you want to call it, about what they said about that, too. And by the way, if you read the Book of Mormon, 3rd chapter, 3rd Nephi, you'll find, this is the letter from Gideonai to Gideonai and Laconius. Remember that letter? Okay. I don't know why they had that name so similar, but they did. Where he tells him basically, you know, we're going to come take you over. But you won't be our slaves if you come with us. You'll be partners of our substance. Communal living? Who has communal living? Who has partners of everybody's substance? That's a form of communism. That's where socialism's going. That's where, were these guys communists? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Read that. Think about it. Partners of our substance. If everybody together owns things together, what path are we on in America? Anyway, we know what the prophets have said and the threats to it. Okay, that's second. The third thing is we must become involved in civic affairs to see that we are properly represented. We must follow this counsel from the Lord. Honest men and wise men should be sought for diligently. Good men and wise men ye should observe to uphold, otherwise whatsoever is less than these come into evil. Remember that wise and wise thing? Okay. Fourth, we must make our influence felt by our vote, our letters, our teachings, and our advice. The prophet Joseph Smith said, It is our duty to concentrate all our influence to make popular that which is sound and good and unpopular that which is unsound. It is right politically for a man who has influence to use it. From henceforth I will maintain all the influence I can get. Now, you know what? There's a way to do this. You can go up with a baseball bat and try and beat it into somebody's head, and it just doesn't work. I know. If you're convinced against your will, if you're browbeat into it, and all that, it's just, you're a wacko, weirdo, steer clear of that guy, whatever it is. You know people that trust you, that love you, that respect you. It might be your spouse, it might be a brother, it might be a family member, a child, or whatever, a grandchild. But do it in a loving, Christ-like way. Help them understand and unfold the principles to them, and they will come to understand it and embrace it by the power of the Spirit. That's how God doesn't convert by the sword, does He? There's other religions out there that think they do, okay? But God doesn't. The real, true, living God doesn't do it that way. Everybody has their agency. But if they're presented with an opportunity to hear and understand by the power of the Spirit, they can be converted. And that's how we need to do it. Not by speaking more loudly or being more forceful in your presentation. No. Present it in the way the Spirit can convey it too. Okay. Here's the statement I told you we're going to have to end here quickly. We need, okay, again, this is John Taylor, October conference in 1879. Talking about the Constitution and what was happening in the nation. And by the way, after this statement, he goes on to talk about the Civil War, which had just gotten over 14 years before. He says, basically, you ain't seen nothing yet, kids. This nation is going to be pounded through a knothole. He put it more eloquently than I just did. But it's going to be a brutal thing. And he says, would you pray for this and wish it upon people? He says, no, neither would I. I would pray that we might avoid this. We got to bring people to the truth. It's really it's an olive branch to the world if they'll live it. So need we be surprised that they should trample underfoot the Constitution of the United States? No, Joseph Smith told us that they would do it. Many around me here knew long ago that they would do this thing, and further knew that the last people that should be found to rally around that sacred instrument and save it from the grasp of unrighteous men would be the elders of Israel. When therefore you see these things progressing, you need to be astonished. Well, I've always been astonished until I read that. Now I'm not so astonished, I just feel bad. But I've always felt bad. Okay. J. Reuben Clark, again, remember, he said the Constitution of the United States is a great and treasured part of our religion. The overturning of the material changing or the distortion of any fundamental principle of our constitutional government would thus do violence to my religion. More or less than this, remember the 98 section? Cometh of evil. Here's Ezra Taft Benson. He said, he's quoting Mary G. Romney, so out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, we who hold the priesthood must beware concerning ourselves, that we do not follow the traps he lays to rob us of our freedom. We must be careful that we are not led to accept or support in any way, any organization, cause, or measure which, in its remotest effect, would jeopardize free agency, whether it be in politics, government, religion, employment, education, or any other field. We can take each one of those and show, wow, what's happening today? What's happening today? It is not enough for us to be sincere in what we support. We must be right. How many people followed Adolf Hitler and thought, wow, they were sincere in that, weren't they? We know how that turned out happily ever after. Or Chairman Mao, or Stalin, or Lenin, or others in this nation could be mentioned. You have to be right. You can't just be sincere. Men are often, this is Ezra Taft Benson again, Elder Benson, back in 1968. Men are often asked to express an opinion on a myriad of government proposals and projects. All too often, answers seem to be based not upon solid principles, but upon the popularity of the specific government program in question. Seldom are men willing to oppose a popular program if they themselves wish to be popular, especially if they seek public office. Such an approach to vital political questions of the day can only lead to public confusion and legislative chaos. Decisions of this nature should be based upon and measured against certain basic principles regarding the proper role of government. If principles are correct, then they can be applied to any specific proposal with confidence. By the way, that's what I found. I'm a simple-minded guy. If I can say, yeah, this fits, this works, this is how it applies in this instance, you understand the baseline principles. The principles are easily applied across a broad spectrum, going on with Ezra Taft Benson. Unlike the political opportunist, the true statesman values principle above popularity and works to create popularity for those political principles which are wise and just. That's what we need to be doing. And Ezra